Heimo and Edna Korth decided on a existence maximum people could not live to tell the tale. A lifestyles in Alaska's brutal, unforgiving wilderness. For over 40 years, they have depended on their skills, instincts, and each unique to stay on a number of the harshest conditions on Earth. However, their journey hasn't been pretty. An extraordinary deal resilience, it's also been marked with the resource of deep heartbreak in the back of the cute landscapes and self-sufficient manner of lifestyles lies a story of now not feasible loss. What tragedy almost broke them, and why, after the entirety, do they nonetheless refuse to leave the land that has given them loads, however, taken even extra to sincerely recognize what we're approximately to find out. We want to move lower once more, to in which it all started. Heimo and Edna are a brilliant breed, real off-the-grid survivalists living deep in Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. It is one of the maximum remote places on Earth, and rarely everybody lives there. In truth, the Korths are among the final to do it. The antique manor, depending completely at the land to live on. However, Heimo Korth wasn't born into this lifestyles. He came from Appleton, Wisconsin, metropolis that, while not big, grow to be, despite the fact that way large than Fairbanks and Juneau blended. On the time, his mother and father, Eric and Irene, were not outdoorsy. Regardless of the reality that his dad had grown up on a farm, he in no way observed out to or searching out trap or fish. Instead, he labored in a production unit, imparting a consistent, predictable lifestyles. Heimo attempted that life too, walking in a production unit once more in Wisconsin. But it wasn't for him. He had constantly felt drawn to the wild at the identical time as a child growing up in the suburbs. At the same time as different youngsters ran towards town, he did the other. Satisfactory, a quick stroll away. There have been open fields and woods organized to be explored maximum of the time. He went on my own, not due to the truth he needed to, but because of the reality nobody else regarded, to percentage his love for it. By the point he modified into a youngster, that pull within the course of the wilderness was too sturdy to disregard. In 1973, at just 18 years antique, a prompt for Canada's Northwest Territories chasing his dream, but this modified into inside the course of the Vietnam battle, and in 1865 days vintage heading north. Raised eyebrows, many assumed he changed into dodging the draft, and those have been now not precisely welcoming, despite the truth that he turned out to be decided to carve out an area for himself in the wild. His first technique changed into as an assistant to a searching guide. However, the pay grew to be so bad he need to barely have sufficient money. Hire and meals, ultimately he had no choice but to return to Wisconsin. However, the wilderness in no manner stopped calling him then. He had been given a break and possibility in Alaska, running for a guide who hunted big pastime within the Brooks Range. He became a long-time antique whilst he stepped into the wilderness for suitable, and he never came lower again. After going for walks with a looking manual for a while, he were given set up with a pal who ran a trapping line. In Alaska, this friend did now not virtually offer him recommendation. He handed over assets, food, traps, the complete setup, and flew him out to a miles-flung cabin within the middle of nowhere. It become really Heimo in the wild for 3 extended months. He struggled to teach himself a way to lure. He came near ravenous, and if that wasn't awful enough, he fell through the ice at the river, losing almost everything he had, and now, not the usage of a real way out. He wrote a letter to his antique boss requesting help. To his surprise, his boss sent him a check for $500 that modified into virtually sufficient to get once more to city and regroup. However, some difficulty had shifted. The wilderness had a hold on him now. He knew this have come to be the type of life he desired. He spent the rest of that first wintry climate on St. Lawrence Island, a tiny Eskimo village way out within the Bering Sea, simply 90 men from Siberia. It is in which he met Edna, regardless of the truth that they did no longer start relationship right away. Now Edna changed into born on January 25th, 1954 as part of the Yupik human beings. Her local call is May Don. Growing up within the community meant know-how, a way to fish, hunt, and live. To inform the story off the land, her uncle Jackson Muck have turned out to be a grasp at trapping foxes. He taught her the whole thing, a way to lessen the furs without unfavorable them, and the manner to take care of them after skinning through. Then Heimo had end up like circle of relatives. He have turned out to be close with Edna's father, Emerson, and spent a number of time with them. Jackson even took him under his wing, displaying him the fine details of trapping and fur steerage. It did not take prolong for Jackson to word that Heimo had an element for Edna, especially at the same time as Jackson jokingly called Edna Howe's partner, but Howe wasn't seeking to confess a few factor small towns have a manner of creating everything, everybody's company, and he wasn't about to be on the middle of the gossip mill. Heimo stored himself busy, assisting, helping Cesar run the village store and reading to R, looking for from the satisfactory on the town at the same time as spring rolled spherical. He left for Beaver Creek, a river in the White Mountains close to Fairbanks. A pal had a cabin available and wished someone to appearance after their dogs for the summertime, so Heo packed up and headed again into the wild for the next. Winter's How changed into deep in the Brooks Range, a brutal stretch of mountains in which survival turned out to be a few quotable words. However, easy in Alaska, they name it hungry, United States, for a purpose there. Truly are not many animals to be had trapping, turned into hard food, modified into scarce, and the bloodless became relentless with deep snow and freezing temperatures, each unmarried day modified right into a war. He may not have made a fortune, but the ones winters usual him into a real mountain man. He proved in truth that he couldn't simplest live to tell the tale, but thrive in one of the most harsh environments on earth. After searching an extended way, and massive Heimo sooner or later discovered what he have become, seeking out an area alongside the Colleen River. This river, a smaller offshoot of the Porcupine River, emerged as tucked away deep in Alaska's wilderness. He needed a gap in which he need to entice sufficient fur to make a residing. However, by the point he arrived, maximum of the brilliant trapping grounds across the Yukon Flats were already claimed, with the useful resource of way of different trappers. But his pal Bob had already been trapping there and invited Heimo to enroll in him further upriver. So Heimo trekked approximately 50 mi upstream. Now, expertise he have become, entering into the very region that would turn out to be his domestic for life. 3 years later, he made his way once more to Songa XE, excited to look Edna again. But the second he laid eyes on her, it hit him genuinely how lonely he'd been without her. All that factor for their first date, they stored it smooth, however. Unforgivable, they went fishing for Dolly Varden, took a bike adventure and crowned it off with pizza. Through the late 70s, Edna made the experience to Howe's cabin inside the mountains. It have become her first time seeing the area he had built, and she, or he, wasted no time pushing him to enhance it. She advised him he had to start building an actual domestic for her, although even she wasn't extraordinary if it end up the proper circulate, but as soon as she said it, she stuck to it. So Heimo started jogging. He had no choice, however, to finish in advance than winter, so for a sturdy week, he worked like someone possessed without a doubt. Because the first snowflake started falling, he placed the closing piece in location. Howe and Edna were given married in 1982, and for optimum of the 1 year, they had no running water, no strength, and no connection to the outside global. Each fall, they hunted and trapped, stocking up enough to survive the prolonged brutal winters. Now Edna's life had already visible its proportion of heartbreak in advance than she met him. She have been engaged to a Swedish biologist, and collectively that they'd children, Melinda and Merlin, but tragedy struck while her fiancé died in an aircraft crash, leaving her by myself to raise their kids. It have grown to be a devastating loss. And The weight of unmarried motherhood rested intently on her shoulders. Her next relationship did now not carry a bargain comfort. Her uncle found firsthand that the man she dated after wasn't correct for her, unfaithful and unreliable, so whilst Hal came into the photo, her uncle had become careful he favored to make sure this guy had become special that he have to cope with Edna proper. In time, Hal proved himself. He followed Melinda, even though she simplest lived with them, for part of the 365 days. Most of the time she stayed with Edna's mother and father in Savona, in which she felt maximum at domestic. Merlin, Edna's son, lived together with her mother and father full-time in Sauna. It changed into not unusual for kids to be raised through grandparents or distinct loved ones. However, that did not make it any less complex for Edna. Leaving them within the return of even for some months turned into painful, but deep down she understood that her dad and mom also can want to provide her kids the stableness she couldn't guarantee within the barren location 4 months after their marriage ceremony. Edna and Heimo welcomed their first daughter together, and that they named her Colin after the Colin River. Colleen, become like a hint wildflower full of existence and interest. She spent summers choosing blueberries, splashing and inside the river with Edna, and the usage of on Hal's shoulders, however extra than. Some details she loved to discover. She had a dependency of wandering off, so Edna sewed a bit bell onto her coat to preserve track of her each night. Because of the fact the family took their walks along the river, the sound of that tiny bell jingled with each step. She had a fascination with the moon, too. Every time it seemed inside the sky, Hal may want to raise her up so she might also want to see it better, and she or he detail with excitement, calling out moo, moo, moo. Then the improbable took place without a doubt. 5 days after her 2D birthday, Colin drowned in a river, twist of fate, and that they in no manner located her. Body the grief, grow to be crushing pals, and own family advised. The courts to leave the bush to start over, some unique place, however. They could not. This became Colleen's. Domestic, her laughter, although echoed in the wind. Her little footprints had been nevertheless in the dust, leaving might likely feel like leaving behind her memory that day. After they lower back to their cabin, Hal carved a wood pass for her. He carefully etched her call and the dates of her short existence into it that fall. He and Edna carried the pass up a small mountain overlooking the valley, and the river. They located it there, a marker of their love and loss, decided to honor their daughter. They attempted to get the mountain named after her. They petitioned the Board of Geographic Names, but the reaction modified into bloodless colon. Wasn't considered traditionally remarkable, sufficient in spite of useful resource from the governor and a congressman. They had been again and again denied. They accrued signatures, did the whole lot requested of them, however. The answer remained the equal after a while. They had to allow it, Skip. But even in their sorrow, Hal and Edna refused to allow. Irrespective of what, Hal and Edna constantly cross again to the cabin on the identical time as wintry weather comes. That land, that life, it's far in their blood. Hal, though strong and entire of energy, says he hopes to spend the rest of his days reachable inside the best location it has ever felt like domestic.